Hello and welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Cultured Nerd Podcast. This week, episode 4, we are going to be talking about what we want to see in James Gunn's DCU. Now that DC Studios is getting to work, we understand that James Gunn has got 7 days to make his announcement, and we're down to the wire. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what we want to see, what we hope to see in the next week with the big announcement. And then with that, James Gunn himself teased hundreds of roles to cast. So we're going to talk about that because that's a big endeavor for them to work on. So lots of stuff to talk about, and let's just go right into it. Boop, boop, boop. We don't have an intro yet, so we're just going to sing along and say it's here. Boom. Here we go.
Hi, Taylor.
How you going, bud?
Doing great.
Good.
Before we talk about what we're going to talk about, that new Trigun show is very good.
It's very good, and the dub came out so quickly. Like, we had episode 3 of the sub and episode 1 of the dub hit, and now it's like just 2 week difference, which is really fantastic. The dub is pretty fantastic. I'm going to say that.
It's picking up where Westworld left off, and it is it's not hiding any of its fun secrets. It's all out there and just making it all characters. It's really fun.
And you saw episode 3, right?
Yes.
Okay. Spoiler alert for anyone who cares. Knives went fully OP in this. Like,
the fact that they made the choice that he's a Dr. Octopus was so great.
Not only that, he's like a Dr. Octopus with like Evangelion level powers. And I'm like watching this, I'm like, this was insane.
And we haven't even seen what our hero's going to tap into, right? Because he obviously can't tap into whatever he is. He says, "You still don't know how to do your stuff yet," and then he shoots his
reference. He's like, "You don't even know what your power is.
Mm-hmm.
Just use it." And he's got his robotic arm is not man-made anymore. It's ancient technology, so he's gonna do some stuff. But no, I love it to pieces. It's fantastic. Again, my only gripe with the entirety of the show is Vash's handgun being a 22 caliber. Because if anyone knows anything about guns, a 22 caliber is a very deadly round, but it's like one step between like a 9mm and a BB gun. Like it's tiny. It obviously can kill people because all guns
gun got messed up. I think he's going to get a new gun.
Maybe, but my gripe was that in the first episode when he throws the rock, you cannot break a rock with a 22. It's like using a slingshot. It doesn't do what it does. So I'm just like watching it like they could have said anything. They just didn't even need to name it. He could have just been like, hand me a random name for a round. Not even don't use the caliber. Just give it a name. Like, hand me a choo-choo round or something. And people will be like, okay. And they throw it at him. You didn't have to name it. But once you named it something that's real, people are going to be like, okay, you took me out of it because I know that's not possible.
Well, the show is, it is another worlds and dimension because as soon as we had the Mad Bomber guys show up, it's like, oh, okay, we can basically do anything at this point.
Right. And in my brain, I'm like, maybe this planet 22 doesn't mean the same thing as our planet. But I'm like, but why did they call it a 22? I was just really annoyed with that. It was just my one gripe that I still can't get over. And then they modeled it after a 22 round. Like it's an actual 1-to-1.
Yeah, it's very tiny
recreation.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, guys, I know Japan doesn't have guns, but spend 30 seconds more on the internet.
They didn't have time for it. Do you know how many episodes this whole thing runs?
Standard Japanese seasons are 12 to 13 episodes.
Okay. You know what? I feel like they're going to do the whole show in 13 episodes. I feel like you don't think so? You think we're just going to get an arc of it?
I think we're going to get like maybe 2 or 3 seasons out of this show. Like, I don't see them doing everything in one hit because they kind of defied the impossible. You took a cult classic and you brought it back and revamped it down to the core, and people are liking it. So I don't think they're gonna wrap it up as quickly as they did the first time.
They put a lot of time into building that first city. Like I couldn't believe, in the original show, he runs from place to place. You know what I mean? Like we blow up a town. We spent so much time in that location. I feel like they're going to do that with all the places. I feel like
That's why I think it's going to. That's why I think it's going to go on for a while. Because honestly, like if you spent 3 episodes in one location telling one story, it was like kind of like the Andor approach, where 3 episodes was one storyline, and it could have been just 1 hour long episode, and you would have had those 3 episodes there. So I think they're going to spend pretty hefty amounts of time into each location they go.
I love that I wonder what other villains from the past. The Nebraska family has been redeemed. They're just a quirky bunch living in this futuristic sci-fi backworld planet.
Yeah. I don't know. I've always liked futuristic Westerns. I think they're fantastic and just loads of fun. So anytime we get some of that, that's just lots of fun. But instead of just wasting everyone's time talking about anime, because I know we can, I know a lot of people are here to want to see us talk about DC. And DC is the topic that people like this show for. I've noticed on our dashboards, on our performances, if we don't talk about DC, people don't tune in.
Well, Taylor, we're in a Ringu situation right now. We've seen the videotape, and we have 7 days to figure out what's going to happen.
Right. So James Gunn said he's going to have December. He said in December, January is going to be the announcement. Everyone speculated literally like, oh, it's going to be this day. It's going to be this day. Even the Scooper said last week the day was going to be Friday. Friday came and went, wasn't there. For all we know, he's having it right now. And since I haven't looked at my phone, he could have just dropped it casually on the internet right now, but he didn't.
And this episode, we've been made wrong 24 hours later. It'd be great if 2 hours after we record, we were made incorrect. Any news yet? Any news on the wire, Taylor?
Nope. Okay. Announced yet. As of 2:30 in the afternoon, PST, no news yet. So if he doesn't drop it within the next 2 hours our time, the video will go live as planned. There won't be any announcement, and nothing will be disproven or proven or anything like that. So fun stuff.
However, think Taylor gave me some predictions. I feel like this Friday is a very safe bet.
My personal predictions are either this Friday, give everyone the weekend to stew it over, or next Monday, because most big announcements happen on Mondays or Tuesdays. So
right, so that outlets can reach out to him and say, we want to talk to you about what you said on Monday.
Right. So my bet is either of those 2 days. I haven't heard a thing. I literally reached out to one of my friends at the studio and asked what on earth is going on. And their response to me was pretty funny. We've been told that the concept art department is going to be starting all the new DC stuff soon. However, nobody knows anything yet because he's not telling anyone until the announcement is made.
He's very smart. The moment those pencils start working, that's when stuff starts leaking. And to that point, we have some news later on that has to do with people approving a concept, and then everyone else found out about it.
Right. And then I asked, so have you heard anything about the announcement? Do you know what day it's happening? What's going to happen? Nope. It's all been extremely closed off. Nobody has said a thing. I will probably find out personally when the leaders find out, which is probably going to be an hour before the announcement.
Prime also gave us that there's a third option, which is the troll one, which would be like Tuesday.
Yeah, the last day of January.
8 o'clock, maybe 10 p.m., like right before the deadline hits. I don't feel like anyone at that studio wants that to happen, but
that would be funny though, because if you work on East Coast time to get, he would do like 8:59 p.m. Pacific time.
Yeah,
it's like it's 11:59 East Coast. Enjoy it, internet.
Maybe
that would be funny, and I think the amount of trolling that he has gotten from fans over the last however long it's been since he got the announcement that he's taken the position, that would be like the biggest like stop trolling me or I'll keep trolling you moment.
Sure.
It'd be a little funny. But I think it needs to go without saying, like a lot of people, I'm still getting a lot of hate on social media, on the Instagram and on the Twitters. A lot of it starting with, man, what happened to you? I can't believe you. And then they just proceed to bitch about how they believed I was this champion of Zack Snyder and I would never turn my back on Zack. And the fact that I'm not like sharpening my pitchfork and lighting my torch in opposition of James is offending people.
Well, the first 3 sentences you said are absolutely true. Taylor is a champion for Zack Snyder and supports Zack Snyder's work and is a fan of his future work. Full stop. Now,
yeah, nothing's
the sharpening of his pitchforks against James Gunn. Yeah. And if you want to take it one step further, I believe Zack Snyder told everybody that James Gunn is a good person and not to do this to him. Like, I mean, whatever's going to happen down the line is going to happen. As of this moment, though,
No, like I have always been very pragmatic. I mean, you've known me since we were kids, and I used to be very hopeful, and I had my hopes shattered all the time. And then I very quickly learned pragmatism is the way to keep your heart from getting ripped out of your butt.
You were so hopeful. You had such stars in your eyes.
So many. And I firmly believed that having hope is great. Hope is good. However, if you have misplaced hope, it can bite you in the ass. And I'll bring Prime in real fast while I finish my statement. So I do Prime. The point that I'm always making is that I want to look at it from the most pragmatic point possible. Zach was given essentially like carte blanche at Netflix, and we know that his pipeline is pretty busy. He spent the entirety of 2022 filming one half of Rebel Moon, and he still has the other half to do. And if their Rebel Moon's a success, then they may do more Rebel Moon. But aside from that, he still has Army of the Dead: Lost Vegas and Planet of the Dead, the sequel, that are also still on the docket. Whether or not those projects are still moving forward, that's still a lot of stuff to do. If he spent one full year making one project and he still has 3 more in the pipeline, I will be as hopeful as I possibly can be that one day Zach will be able to finish his DC story. I will still champion that project. I will love it. I will say I want it. I will restore the Snyderverse. I will tweet it. I will do all those things because I want those things to happen. But from a purely realistic and pragmatic point, I don't see those happening anytime soon, and DC cannot sit on their hands and continue to stay in the red while they wait. So they're moving forward with a brand new universe. They're not doing the half measure that Hamada did, where we're going to fire some people, recast others, and keep others. He's going to just make a new universe and firmly tell everyone again, the multiverse is the plan. Your stuff still exists. This is just something new in the multiverse. And that's kind of the point of the Flash movie, to tell everyone that, oh, by the way, just because Val Kilmer came or George Clooney came didn't mean Michael Keaton never stopped being Batman. His universe kept going. And that's the point of those movies. So the Zack Snyder universe does not die because it's not being focused right now. It's still continuing. And if Zack wants to pick it up in a few years, everyone will quite literally be at the age they're supposed to be in the Nightmare timeline. So it's fine.
Not to mention the fact that something you just said, which I think needs to resonate with people, that if hypothetically down the line the Zack Snyder universe is going to come back, it's going to come back with the aid of James Gunn. If it even gets brought to the table, it is because James Gunn sees the value in it and bringing that along. So whatever that's going to be, he will be a partner in it and will be a partner there for a while. Oh, Prime's saying no to me. Prime, you're giving me big head nods. What are you thinking?
They're going to be too old.
Yeah.
Just in general, you mean like
by the time all that comes into fruition, let's say hypothetically, and exactly what Tyler was just saying. I've been saying things for over a year now. There's no way. Zach has too much on his plate. You can't even fit that stuff in there. It's absolutely, it's not. Is it possible? Sure. But the probability of it happening? No. He has too much on his plate. And then on top of that, everybody, again, the cast just alone by itself, okay? And I know people are not going to do their due diligence, but for the ones that have, just look at the cast. All you guys just got to do is go to the credits. As a matter of fact, you ain't even got to do that. Go to Zack Snyder's Justice League and look at all the people that is utterly in the film and that's in this universe. Okay? These are not small name people. Not only financially, but these people have other projects. And to have them all come together later on down the line, and they're going to be much, much older. Now, people got to realize Henry Cavill is in his what? Late 40s now?
I thought he was still early 40s. I think he was like 41.
Late 40s, early 40s. Hey, he in his 40s. By the time that comes, he will be pushing 50. But think about it. We're at 2020.
39. He's 39 right now. So he would be probably...
So 39. Okay, so let's just
at
say
the minimum, he'd be 35
39.
by the time some stuff happens.
Yeah, I'll say about 45, 46.
Yeah.
Okay. So Ben Affleck is already in his 50s. That's done. Gal Gadot is on her way. She's getting older. And for the people that just, she want to do different projects. Now, if she still wants to be Wonder Woman, fine. For the time being, Jason Momoa is not going to be. I don't even get into all that. All I could just say is that the cast is too big. They're going to be much, much older. Okay, if you want to have a perfect example of that, the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League should tell you enough and what it is. Because Ben Affleck does not look like he was. He lost a lot of weight. He looks a lot older. Henry Cavill going to be the same way. Gale is going to be the same way. Probably the only one that probably pretty much might be the same is, Jason Momoa. I'm just talking about the main cast. I ain't talking about all the big ones. J.K. Simmons is old. William Dafoe, old. Okay, Amber Heard, she's probably not going to be able to even play it, even if they give her the opportunity. These are things that people are not even looking at or even trying to process in their mind. And by the time this even comes, let's just say, I would say by the time it even thinks about coming to fruition, we're in 23. I say 2028 at the max.
Yeah,
because
that's so conservative. That's to say that they really get this thing on the rails in the next 4 years. That's super. I hear you. That's you put your wishing hat on. Maybe 6 years, maybe 7 years. You know what I mean?
I'm being nice. I'm just being nice. I'm just being nice. So my thing, and like Tyler said, Rebel Moon, he's still working on the second one.
The second half hasn't even started rolling.
Right. I'll just put it like this and I'll shut up. The first one is coming out when? It's coming at the end of this year.
Christmas 23.
Yes, it's coming out the end of this year. If he gets done with the second one fully, I'll say he'll be basically getting done with the second one by the end or by the release of the first one.
Yeah.
He'll be getting done.
For sure.
And he still got, like you said, he still got to still work on the Army of the Dead. He still got those 2 other projects with that. He still got those. And then last but not least, which I believe could potentially happen, I'm not saying it will. Netflix, again, I'm going to say it to the day I die. People just don't want to listen to it because they don't. He's with Netflix. If they ask him to do Gears of War after he's done, you think he's not going to do it? He might do it.
Yeah, especially if they tell him, do this show for us. You can do Rebel Moon whenever you want to, right? If they give him a blank check and say, great, that project's waiting for you whenever you want to start it. Yeah.
Zach is in a good place, people. I don't know why people are not understanding this. You know what I mean?
So I'm also going to bring in Nicotina real fast.
Hey, what's up?
What's up, Nick?
So we were just talking about because I've been getting a lot of hate lately for being not so torches and pitchforks against James Gunn.
Hold on, you're getting hate, Taylor? No way.
Get I know. I mean,
this is not real.
Yeah, no, me not getting hate. That's It's like it's Tuesday. There must be hate coming. But it's funny because a lot of people are mad that I'm not hating on James Gunn or not lighting the torches and sharpening the pitchforks against the realistic situation that has already happened. And realistically, again, we're all just basically saying that Zach is super busy. He's going to be super busy. The cast is super busy. Even if Netflix reaches out to DC and says, hey, what would this happen? Would DC even be like, okay, well, if you can secure the cast, go for it. Because that's kind of the reality is that everyone is insanely busy.
Yeah. I mean, is it possible? Yes. However,
kind of, yeah.
I mean, anything is possible, right? But is it really going to happen? And here's the thing is that people are trying to compare this to Sony and Spider-Man, okay? We're talking about Spider-Man, one character, and likely characters that relate to Spider-Man, right? So, and that has to be negotiated as well. Okay, so if we're going to get Spider-Man, then we want to be able to use Doc Ock. Okay, so, how much you want, how do you want to use him? Well, this is how he's going to be our main villain, and we'd like to have these characters available because we want to have them as part of this Spider-Man story, and then we can renegotiate more characters as we move on. However it works out. But when you're talking about that, when you're talking about the Justice League, people are like, "Oh, sell the Snyderverse to Netflix." Really, it's like what you're asking is lease the Justice League characters to Netflix. Because I mean, look, as much as we love Zack Snyder and the Snyderverse and everything that he has established, I mean, I'm wearing his damn shirt, for instance.
Yeah.
The
I
thing
have
is
that same
like,
shirt over here. I
just saw the top
somewhere.
of your shirt. I thought it was a Blink-182 shirt.
Oh yeah, no,
just from the swords, I thought it was that album, but no, okay, that's what it is.
But the thing is that we're talking about leasing out the license to use Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, Cyborg, all these characters, right? Now, like when it comes to they can get the actors to come back. Well, that's great. That's awesome. I just don't see why DC would say, "Hey, look, we need money, guys. Let's lease out our characters, and then let's also reboot our own universe, and then we'll have them going at the same time." To me, that all that does is add competition to your own product, because then people are going to say, "Oh, look how dumb, look how much we don't like what James Gunn is doing, and how much we love what Zach is doing." Because more than likely, whatever Zach does is going to be fire, right? And he already has a story that we're already familiar with, so we're going to be like, "Yes, I already know." Like, if that were to happen, I already know what I'm getting with Zach, because I have an idea of what the story's going to be about. I can't wait. I'm hyped. Let's go. But I just don't see how Warner Bros. Discovery is going to be like, "Okay, yeah, let's do that, and let's have it compete against our own universe that we're trying to reboot and build up." And people would argue that, "Oh, well, they need money. They need money. They need money. They need money." If they needed money that bad, they would have made Zack Snyder's Justice League Part 2 and 3 already.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like, they had an opportunity to make money off of that. They chose not to. So now they're going to let another IP or another platform, company, studio make money off of that. Granted, it would cost the other company I don't know if you guys swear on here or not.
Like $1 billion fucking dollars.
Yeah, a fuck ton of money to do it. And and look, do I want them to do it? Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would love to see them do it. I just don't see how, and I don't see why they would want to do it.
Yeah, but even removing our own feelings from this conversation, Netflix is in no place right now to be doing that. Their numbers are a little bit better than what they thought it was going to be, but like they don't have the money to do something like that. In fact, I don't necessarily think they know what their big next thing is going to be. It's going to be Rebel Moon, and it's going to be some other things associated with that, but I don't see them doing that. And one of the other things you talked about, is leasing these characters. You're right. You're not going to be leasing Batman and Superman to Netflix.
They're not.
But on the same token, we're in a very weird spot, because I would say to you, well, give them some of your B characters. But I think that's what James Gunn is going to do. We'll get to the next point right about now. He's talking about hundreds of actors for casting. I think we're going to get something Prime talks about all the time, is that the universe of DC is huge and we've barely even touched it. If we start getting characters out of the woodwork, there might not necessarily be those characters of like, oh, there could be a Netflix Plastic Man show. Because it's like, I think he might be front and center as somebody finally. So I don't know where all that shakes out.
Yeah.
For the people that don't know how many characters that are actually in DC, it's 242. It's 242 characters that are actually slated. Yes. 242 characters.
I mean, when he says hundreds of roles to cast, I mean, obviously we're talking about side characters, extras, everything in general. So he's being very vague, because he has to be vague. And everyone's like, "Oh, James Gunn's going to release part of his slate this month," and he might. But I mean, if you ask me, I think all he's going to do is he's going to give likely a vague release date for the next Superman movie, a director for the Superman movie, because it's going to have to happen pretty soon.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't see him giving away much of the slate, because you want that bombshell to drop at San Diego Comic-Con.
Films tops.
If that, I mean, if we're going to get more than one film,
generous.
I would say yes, very generous. I would say it would be one film, if not two, and that's it. Because your Super Bowl is San Diego Comic-Con. That has to be your biggest heavy hitter, where you show your entire slate and what you're up to.
And they need to come out. They are new to the scene with James Gunn at the helm. They need to come out swinging, correct?
Absolutely.
They need to make an impact.
And we already know James is going to be there, because he's still promoting Guardians 3 with Marvel. So Marvel's going to be like, Guardians 3, and he's going to be like, cool, now I'm going to stay on the stage for another half an hour and do the DC show.
So
don't
weird.
bother me.
It's going to be so
Yeah,
weird.
it's going to be so weird because he's going to do his promotion for it and then be like, okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow for the other panel that's happening. I think you guys know what, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting because, you know, it just, in order to get this thing done, right? This whole Netflix thing, which I don't think is going to happen. I would love to see it happen, but I just don't see. I just don't see the logistics of it. I don't see how it could ever work out, and how Netflix. How Warner Bros. Discovery would look at it as a win for them. Like, yeah, this is great. We just made $1 billion off of it. Well, dude, that article the other day said how they were what was it 50 or 500? No, I think it was $50 billion in debt.
Yeah.
If they lease out the characters and get $1 billion,
that's a drop in the well.
It's like, okay, let's say they get $2 billion, okay, and that's a stretch. How much of an impact is that going to make on their $50 billion debt? It won't. It's something that they have to gradually work off within the next, X amount of years that they're trying to strategically plan for, because you can't pay all it off at once.
Right.
You can't. That's too much money.
And I saw the 2 Forbes articles. The first article was basically like, it's not possible because of facts and numbers and basically everything we said here. And then the second article was like, they should do it because my feelings and for optics. And it was all just them basically saying, if Warner Brothers wants to not piss off the fans, they should consider it. But it doesn't say anything about logic or money or anything like that. It was just all about appease the fans, stop everyone's hurt feelings. It'll look really good on optics. Do it. And I was like, wow, that's not the best approach.
It's not.
No. I mean, people have to fail to realize, I understand you want to appease to a particular audience, but you don't necessarily always get what you want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're dealing with business and when you're dealing with finances, you have to do what that's going to be beneficial to the company and what's going to be best for you. Now, we all know that, understand people are going to be mad, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. How a business is going to look at it is that give them time. They'll fall in. They'll fall in eventually.
I was mad when I was 8 or 9 years old and I found out that Michael Keaton was done as Batman. And I was mad when I found out that Tobey Maguire's last movie was a movie I didn't really care for. I was mad when we never got the ending film to the trilogy for Andrew Garfield. I was mad at literally comic book fans should be aware that being mad is kind of our natural state. So it's.
I mean, on the flip side of things, I don't know if you guys are going to talk about it later, but I'm sort of shoehorning it in just for this moment. But when you talk about making content that's so close and accurate to the source material, like The Last of Us is, I mean, it feels like I'm playing the game. I'm like, whoa, this is a trip. Like, I'm like, how did they pull this one off? And that's the closest I've ever seen any show be to its source material, let alone a video game. And it literally feels like I'm playing the game. I'm like, so I feel like when this episode is over, I'm going to go jump on my PS4 and just continue on from where they left off. It's so accurate.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite part of the episode has been watching Joel repeatedly die again and again because he doesn't have enough materials to make his ships. So it's been fantastic. And that's what it felt like. The show is so good. And there has been some changes, but I love some of the changes they made. Like the intro to the first episode where they had the scientists basically just explain how the world's going to end. And I'm like, that was so scary because that's very real.
Yeah.
And then the second episode, they did the same thing again. And I'm like, oh my God, every episode is going to start with them telling us how the world's going to end and it's going to be our fault.
And I'm glad, and even with that, since you on it, I'm glad that they're paying so much to detail, because if you watch the first episode, remember they was eating breakfast?
Yeah.
And then they was listening to the radio and they were saying about the outbreak, but then they said, well, it's someplace in Indonesia. They actually did it in Indonesia.
And then they showed in the second episode, it was the flower from Jakarta. Guess what? All you fanboys who saw that Easter egg, they were right. But the changes they've made, even the second episode, everything that happened with Tess, very different from the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
But absolutely fantastic. I felt it had more emotional weight, especially with that really creepy moment.
The fact that they're getting it, like, there's a number of these, like, I'm a big fan of the Nair games, and that guy, like, sharpens those sticks every game. And The Last of Us is now getting another go-over to really hone these characters and stories. And I don't know where I don't think we're going to get Last of Us HBO video game, but maybe we
No.
do, because listen, this is all just content. And I wonder how these worlds are going to interweave into each other. Because when season 2 comes around, there's going to be things from The Last of Us 2 that they're going to get to not retcon, but get to maybe play with a little bit more, or some ideas that they didn't have. And that's very exciting.
Well, because they're about halfway through the game already. I was watching episode 2. I was like, man, this is a good chunk of the game right here. Yeah. Like when they went into the museum, I was like, holy shit, they did it. Like they recreated that entire part of the game. And then like, I mean, look, they could have easily have, introduced, what's her name? Ella to the show, that, she's, the reason why that she's important. So I don't spoil it if anyone hasn't seen it yet. And then from that point forward, they could have easily have done their own thing. Like, okay, so when we go out there, it's going to look like this. Or no, instead, right away, you see the building, collapsed over. Even in this episode, they're on the rooftop, and he's like, "Be careful with that." And he goes, "These aren't monsters. These are planks of wood." She crosses over. I was like, "Dude, that was in the game." And then when he crosses over, and she was like, "Man, can't beat that view," and it shows like the top of the Civic Center or whatever that was. I was like, oh my God, I was in the game. Like, and the music too. I was just like, wow, how are they doing this? Blew my mind, dude. I was like,
it's because they hired the right people. They got the director of the game to direct the episode. They got the writers from the game to oversee the writing staff. They got the musicians from the game to do the music. Like, it's not rocket science.
Right. this is what Resident Evil didn't do.
Right, but maybe this is the 100th. But maybe this is the 100th monkey, because Taylor just talked about how disappointed he's been his entire life with these properties. So it's like, right? Think how many times they've done Resident Evil terribly. Think how many times what was the Monster Hunter movie, right? That's awful. So maybe we've just reached that point of like, oh, maybe the visionaries that directed these video games, maybe we should get them in here. And also, that Kojima is just like, I have bided my time. It is time for me to strike. He's waiting in the shadows for him to do the Metal Gear Solid movie, which please give the man that directed the movie, because it'll be so weird. But it's like, that's the question that we're at right now. Who do we bring into these projects?
Right. These projects are big and they deserve to be done this way. That's what I think, because the Last of Us movie would have never worked. Sam Raimi said it would have never worked. The miniseries format, the TV show format, that's the way to adapt these things. And I think that's what we're now learning, is that if you do it right, if you follow it correctly, you're going to do it this way. Mm-hmm. And just keep Paul W.S. Anderson the hell away from video game properties. You said it, Monster Hunter, all the Resident Evil movies, just keep them away.
It feels like going into those movies, they were like, has anyone ever played the game? Anybody? No? Okay.
I saw the pictures on the back once.
And also, when you look at Capcom's re-releasing of Resident Evil 2 and stuff like that, when they do these HD remakes, there's an audience there for them that want that nostalgia. Resident Evil 2 has such a cinematic quality to it. It's crazy. Just copy the opening. Just do what they do in the game. Bring the things. And they've never been able to do that. So maybe this is the 100th monkey. Maybe from here on out, we start seeing those properties better. Because the Uncharted movie was awful. Awful.
Yeah, it was.
Listen, we go back and forth. You go, oh, I like this scene, or I like this part of cinema, or I like that there was an adventure under the bar that felt like Indiana Jones. Right. That's all fine. The movie was awful. The third act was awful.
It was pretty bad.
But go ahead. I mean, what else can you say? I mean, video games, for every Last of Us and Detective Pikachu and all these other properties that have done it correctly by just honestly being reverent to the property, you get the opposite. And I think the audiences are now, they're telling studios what they want. I mean, we're going to see Netflix just pump out their adaptations next. We got One Piece coming out. We've got Avatar coming out. If those don't work, Netflix will be crucified on a level they have not seen before.
I'm really scared about that Avatar. Everything is pointing, all the I feel like a bunch of warning flags have started coming up for that property. And those Avatar kids are in the early 30s now. They're going to rip that part of show. They're going to be blood in the water if they do not do that well.
Yeah, but let's get on to the topic at hand, because I think we've already spent a half an hour on everything else that we wanted to address, and we firmly established that I'm not some Zack Snyder hater. I've spoken to the guy; he's a beautiful human being. I love him.
Yeah, I mean that's the kind of crazy delusional part of all this is that, you know, if you are not, you know, waving the banner of whatever the majority of fans are doing, then it's like, oh, well, then you're a shill, or you're an anti, or whatever they want to label people as. Just sort of like, you know, them against us mentality. I think it's very sophomoric, very immature, and I think that some people are actually using that to their own advantage, which I think is wrong. I mean, we're talking about a comic book movie that we're a fan of a certain type of. That's like saying, like, I'm really a fan of this, right? Of Deceased. Thank you, Brian, for showing me this. That's like saying I'm a fan of this, and if I'm not getting more of this, then I don't like anything you're going to give me. That's not really how it works. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's not how it works.
To me, it immediately makes me think of episode 3 with Anakin. Like, if you're not with me, you're against me. And he's like, what's wrong with you? like that whole,
what is going on?
He's like, my allegiance isn't to you. My allegiance isn't to Padme. My allegiance isn't to, it's like, my allegiance is to democracy. What is wrong with you?
Exactly.
And that was that whole argument. I'm like, I've said to people, I love Zach. I love what he did. I love his movies. I would give it all up right now to continue his projects. My loyalty has never been to Zach, to the Snyderverse. My loyalty has been to DC, to these heroes. My loyalty is to Batman. And if the character is done correctly, I will show up. If it's not done correctly, I will pitchfork and torch. I will do all those things. But as long as the character is done correctly, I'm going to show up. Like, I showed up with Matt Reeves as Batman. I'm 100% not going to show up with the CW's Gotham Knights, because I saw that they already from the trailer that they're just abusing Batman right off the bat. So
yeah.
My loyalty is to the characters, and we now have James Gunn. Within the next 7 days, he's going to make his announcement of something other, Superman for sure, but something else. And the only finite details that we have is that he is writing a Superman project, and names of, like, there's been a handful of names that have come out the woodwork of people that are being discussed to work at DC. I think.
What? Okay. So this Superman project, that has to be the seed for the rest of this universe.
Right.
So we're going to get a new Superman, Lois Lane. What are the other a new Jor-El, right? Probably a new origin parents, right? We'll get a new Kent's. We'll get the staff of the newspaper.
Perry White, Cat Grant, all them.
And then who else realistically do we get? Like, not references to Star Lab. Do you think we get names of people that we see? Do you think we're going to get that will be the seeds of those things? Or do you think we get a villain organization? Do you think we get something like that? You can't have Superman without Lex Luthor. So Lex Luthor is going to be showing up. Like,
yes.
Maybe in reference.
I think so.
Like in Man of Steel, Lex Luthor's name was subtly everywhere, but you never saw him. We'll probably get, if he's not front and center, we'll probably see something like that. 100% think Star Labs is going to play a big role, and we're going to see Dr. Emil Hamilton. We'll probably see Silas Stone. We'll probably see who is the other half of Firestorm? Was it Martin Campbell?
You said Firestorm?
Yeah, who's the other half of him?
It's Professor. Damn it, that's a good question. It's a professor, and I can't think of his name.
Martin Stein.
Yeah, Martin Stein. Yeah, Professor.
Yeah, we'll probably get Martin Stein as, like, we're gonna get the DC Easter egg references in the staff of Star Labs, but probably not like we're not gonna see them, but we'll be like paging Dr. Stein, like something like that.
Yeah,
like,
there'll be some kind of Easter egg that references the character.
Yeah, but the names that we've heard from people, like, obviously people are assuming James Gunn is going to write and direct and do everything with this film, which is possible. But we've also heard names like James Mangold from Logan and Indiana Jones is being courted by DC to helm some project for them. We've seen names of, like, I mean, obviously they've met with Chris Nolan, Steven Spielberg for, like, advisory roles, but nothing like directing wise, but they could still direct things.
Yes.
Ben Affleck has been spoken to about directing a project or two. And there's just been a handful of names. I'm drawing a complete blank right now, but I heard like, who was the guy who directed one of the Harry Potter movies? Steven Soderbergh.
Oh wow! Oh, you got blank on that.
That was the guy who did what is it?
The fourth
The
one.
last, yeah. Well, it was one who did the last two of them.
Okay, yeah.
But no,
A big-
it was Christopher
right.
Columbus. David Yates was the name
David
that I
Yates.
heard.
David Yates,
is
there you
someone.
go.
But see,
They're-
but that
they're-
makes
they're
sense to
talking
me because they want to court people that can do a huge
Ensembles.
an ensemble, but also like, hey, you
Scale.
need to hit these tent marks, and this story altogether is 4 hours long.
Yeah.
Harry Potter, the last one, is just a huge movie.
Yeah, it was so big they had to divide it into 2 movies, and it was
Right.
still a big ass movie.
Still a big ass
Yeah.
movie.
But realistically, what do we want to see? Like, and obviously, if James announces 3 movies tomorrow, what are the 3 that you want to see?
That's a good question.
Well, yeah.
If you're going to establish it, like you said, of course we're going to get Superman. That's going to be first. The second movie I will say would be because it has to resonate with this generation.
Do you think it's
So
Wonder
Superman
Woman
has
because
to be
they
the
took
start.
it away from Gal Gadot?
Right. Because you can't. I can't say you can't. It wouldn't be in the best. I think it wouldn't be in the best interest to do it. It wouldn't be in the best interest to do an original Wonder Woman movie because we just got one. We just got one. It wouldn't be in the best interest to do another Batman solo film. That not just to start off. Yeah, okay. To start off anything DC, like we say, it got to be Superman. I think it should be. You could do it like this. You could do a Teen Titans, interject it. You can do. You got to do the Green Lantern Corps. You got to introduce that. You got to introduce. Let's see. There's a lot because it's so many characters that you can actually do. But if you're going to start it with Superman and B characters, you can introduce. You could bring in Mr. Terrific. You could bring in certain elements of characters to bring it into that, especially with the B characters. But just my personal opinion, don't do anything Wonder Woman or Batman. Because if you're going to get this universe off the ground, everybody already know Wonder Woman and Batman. You already know that. But you know they're going to be part of it. You got to get the characters that people don't know. Teen Titans would be perfect because this generation knows Teen Titans. They love them. So you got to do something with that. That's what I believe.
Would you be okay if there was if the cinematic Teen Titans had a couple of different Titans for story purposes? Like, yeah. I don't think they're going to bring I don't think Blue Beetle, I don't think the movie Blue Beetle will be on Teen Titans, but like you could very easily, I could see Blue Beetle as being a part of that team.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The Teen Titans will be perfect because you're going to have a Blue Beetle movie.
But I think the one issue that you run into with Teen Titans, and I think it's a fire idea. I would love to see a live action Teen Titans. Is that again, if you go the route of Teen Titans, you have to deal with the elephant in the room, which is Batman, because you have Robin or you have a Nightwing on that team. So it's like, where does Batman come into play? How do you reference Batman? What Batman is it? What's happening? So that's going to be the major thing. Is that like, hey, where's Batman? So I think kind of what Prime was saying, obviously we know Superman's going to be, the first one, but if you do a Batman movie, I just think it's very confusing because now you also have the Batman that's out there, which I mean, look, I like the Batman, but I mean, to be honest, like I felt like it was unnecessary because it was kind of like, what are we doing here? Like, this is cool. I love what Matt Reeves came up with, but this seems unnecessary because he's not connected to anything. And so if this was like, I don't know, 20 years ago, I'd say this is a great idea. But now that we're in the world of, connected universes, now you have a Batman who is outside of everything else. And if you integrate him into the DCU, to me, it feels like that's like bringing Christian Bale into the DCEU. It would have been like, dude, that guy's going to get killed. You know what I mean? Like he's too grounded to be in a world with a Martian Manhunter and a Superman. So, I mean, it is interesting because if you did Teen Titans, then you don't have it's just easier to kind of bring them in, sort of how they try to do Suicide Squad. Like, hey, here's just a group of dudes who are all villains, which we can expand upon much later on. So, I mean, other than Superman, look, if he says we're going to do Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, that's going to be like, oh my God, that's going to change everything. And then where does the Flash and Aquaman and Blue Beetle fall in? And Shazam, Fury of the Gods. Are they just left behind? Are they just, hey, those came out this year. Those aren't my productions. So in 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years, when you get my Superman movie, that'll all be forgotten about because we're not going to make anything.
About world building as well. When we're talking about characters that connect, like Green Arrow is the secretary of the Justice League. He's like in every, you know what I mean? Like anytime there is communication, the Green Arrow's involved. I love the Green Arrow as a character, but it's difficult to be like Wonder Woman, Batman, guy with bow and arrow. Like even in the Marvel universe, they have been unsuccessful. Hawkeye had to be a part of the Avengers movie. You know what I mean? We didn't get his own thing. And even his own show wasn't even about him. It was about other people doing stuff with him.
It was about Kate Bishop the entire time. It was like, how do we promote Kate Bishop? Which I thought she did a great job, Haley Steinfeld, but still I was just like, okay, this is not his show, really.
So who could you team up Green Arrow with? What if the second movie is Green Arrow and somebody else?
Green Lantern. Give us the Emerald Knights. Give us the team up, the Hal Jordan and Green Arrow. Like, give us
I
the
think
classics.
that's your safest bet is to do Superman and the next one be the Green Lantern Corps or just a Green Lantern movie because it takes place, in outer space. I think that's something that you can do without having to interfere with anything else as you kind of like figure it out. Now, obviously, he has a plan of what he wants to do. In this rumor about Momoa playing Lobo, if that ever did happen, I was saying the other day that like it wouldn't surprise me if that did happen and Momoa is now playing Lobo. I could see Lobo being DC's version of the Mandalorian. Now, obviously, it'll be different because he has more of an attitude. He's totally different from the Mandalorian, but it'll be a bounty hunter in space who's traveling space doing different jobs. And then that's where you come across lanterns. That's where you come across different characters in the cosmic realm.
I was about to say, Lantern, New Genesis, Third Planet. Like maybe even that's the way that you get all of the new gods and just reference them, even if you don't get to them. But like they talk.
Stay out of that sector. They're weird over there.
They're weirdos over there. You don't want to go over there.
After basically what y'all stated, I had to think about it for a minute. Yes, that would be, but I wouldn't. Teen Titans would probably be a little bit down the line. It would have to be Green Lantern and Korra would have to be utmost. Yeah. I would do Green Arrow. I would do Green Arrow, and then you can introduce Speedy as well.
Yeah.
You could bring in Speedy.
Right, because that's the other thing as well. If we're gonna do the Teen Titan movies, which they should, all of these big heroes need to introduce a junior subclass hero so that we have them established for when everyone gets taken down. Speedy contacts Robin and says, hey, what's going on? Right? Like you can have that make sense within that universe.
Yeah. Right, because you got to establish it.
I think the heroes need to be established first before we can jump into the Titans. Otherwise, you're going to have to age up the heroes more so than what we already know is happening because they're trying to set up a franchise with each of these new heroes. So the likelihood of having any of these heroes be old enough to have their sidekick is maybe the second film, not the first. Like, even if they did the same thing they did with Ben, with the new Batman, and be like, "Here's our Batman. He's also 15 years older than our Superman." That would mean that his Robin is the same age as Superman, which would be weird. So it's like,
well, that's. I don't know. Did y'all say also doing the Green Lantern and Green Arrow?
Yeah, I think
too.
If I had to pick my three, obviously, like Superman comes first, 100%. Like Superman is he shouldn't even be part of the three because we know it's happening. Yeah. But I would say Green Lantern, one or the other, do like Hal Jordan Green Lantern or John Stewart Green Lantern and have Hal Jordan be the supporting character. It'd be fun to have a Green Arrow project of some kind. If you introduce this Batman to this world, I don't want him to get his own solo film. I want him to be reserved for team-ups. So I want like a World's Finest. His first appearance should be World's Finest with Superman.
I agree.
That's how I would do it.
Good. That's good.
Show that they're different, but don't have it be like I think the biggest issue that people had with Batman v Superman was, why are they fighting? It's like, if you read the comics, you understand why they're fighting, but do something
The general
different.
casual audience don't know that. But
do World's Finest, have them be a team up.
Mhm.
Yes, have them throw a punch at each other at one point over an argument, but don't make it the title card match for the movie.
And make that punch count. Let's even have Batman put the ring on and punch
like, smack him
Superman
in
with
the jaw.
with the kryptonite ring. He's like, you can punch me. He's like, yeah, I can do that anytime I want to, bro.
Like, just have one of those lines like he had in the New Frontier, where he's like, I've got a box of matches for that Martian from this city. I can take you down with a rock. Know your place. And like something like that. Just be like, oh, it's Batman. Okay, he's prepared.
Well, I mean, even in the World's Finest, in the animated movie, I thought that was such a great way to introduce the two of them.
Yeah.
How he just pulls that little baggie,
He's like,
and it has a piece of kryptonite. He's like, oh, he's like, doesn't take much, does it? You know what I mean? That was really cool. I was like, yeah, he's already thought ahead. You know what I mean?
And I also
he had it on
that same note. I loved how like he's like Bruce Wayne. He's like, you peeked, and then like throws it at him, and then like the next scene you see him waiting for him at his apartment. Like, I know your secret too, Clark, and like. Just have that kind of a moment where they clearly are at starting, they're like lauding it over each other, and now they're like, oh, we're going to keep each other's secrets because we're friends now.
I want to gauge the room real quick. Would y'all feel disappointed if the third project and part of this was the next Suicide Squad project? Now, it would be within this universe and would absolutely be setting something else. Maybe that's a great way to have Green Arrow show up. Green Arrow kicks the Suicide Squad's ass in the middle of that movie or something like that. But would you be disappointed if we found out it was Superman, Green Lantern, the next Suicide Squad?
I would be.
Yeah, I would be.
be
It's kind of like, hey,
solely-
we've already seen two of these, you know?
I would be solely for the purpose of, if you're starting a new universe, how is there enough villains already locked up to start a Suicide Squad?
Sure.
I know.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Where was taking place here? Because it was easy to do it in DCEU because Batman was already established as Batman. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
kind of like, okay, these villains have already existed. You know what I mean? Like,
And they
we're
had
fine
that
there.
line. He's like, I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm like, okay, so he's
Yeah.
got 20 years of people he put in prison. And then the movie, the roster was all Batman villains anyways. So it's like,
Hey, he was capturing Deadshot, you know. So it was like, oh, he's putting them all behind bars, you know. So, but I mean, to what Michael was saying, I could definitely see that being a possibility. That hey, you're also going to get another Suicide Squad movie because those are easy to make, and I already made one.
Feels so safe. And we know that he's going to continue doing Peacemaker, and his wife is involved in this universe. And like,
Do we know?
it's now become, we don't know that. You're very true. That's very true. It just feels like this a family project to him. And I feel like that's where his friends can go in this whole universe.
I
What's
could see him
crazy
do
is-
something like that where he announces, like, here's my slate. So in 2025, the reboot universe is starting. However, in the meantime, so you guys have content, here's Peacemaker season 2, which will be the last. I could see something like that being
It's just really weird because I mean, like over on the Four Nerds, like we've talked about this aspect of is Shazam, Flash, Blue Beetle, Aquaman, and the Lost Kingdom, are these all going to be movies that connect to each other and then it just sort of stops?
They are. It's going to be like somebody pulled an emergency brake.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, so you can have these sets of movies that are coming out this year. They can connect to one another, but then after Aquaman, you're not going to get another film for at least another 2 years, two and a half years.
We still have.
So then
the
nothing
Joker
connects to
sequel,
those.
something like
Well,
that.
but that's already set in its own separate universe, and by that point, the Batman Part 2 hopefully comes out in 2025 maybe. So now you have two movies coming out 1 year after another that are set aside in their own pocket universe. So having said that, could you have these films this year have connected tissue with each other, but then in the next, over the next 2.5 years, 3 years, you're going to get a reboot altogether?
What if
I would say this, even though and like you said, Nicotita, because with the Reeves Batman that's is coming out, but everything is going to be predicated on, like I said, I want to say this, how James Gunn is going to incorporate this Superman and who he's going to put in, because he has an abundance of villains that he can actually put in, and you don't want to rehash the same ones, because what's going to happen is that you're going to piss off a lot of people. It's like, well, why are you going to regurgitate these same villains when you can just go ahead and get a villain? That's how I'm going to base how he's going to start the universe off with a particular villain.
Right. So no
and it
General
has to
Zod.
be-
Right. We go to Brainiac. We go to somebody like that as the tent pole that we build towards.
You could do Brainiac, but that would be a little bit too soon. You want to do something.
Yeah.
You could have Lex in the background. He could be some type of influence, but he's not the primary.
I would
Okay,
like to
because
see
you gotta have
version
that or
of Lex.
flirt with it. But
Yeah.
I don't think doing Zod, Lex Luthor, or anything of that magnitude should be the actual case. It should be something where there's a low, is a character that's in Superman's gallery, you know. And like I said before, somebody that's strong, somebody that can give him problems. That's James Gunn style. That's Mr. Plex. I can't even pronounce that fool name all the damn time. I keep on forgetting how to pronounce his name, but that's a good villain to start out with because it's going to be interdimensional. It's going to be magic. It could be a lot of stuff that could be introduced within that universe. But just trying to regurgitate one of the main villains again, that wouldn't be wise. That's just in my opinion. If you're going to just make Lex the primary or Zod the primary, that wouldn't be wise to me. You know.
Well, no, because we've already done Zod and we've already done all these characters. So I think you can have Lex in the movie and have him be a part of whatever's happening in the movie.
That's what I was saying.
He could be a villain. Yeah, like he could be a villain in the movie, but like there has to be like an ultimate villain, like a Metallo or somebody that he has to fight against. Because you have to have that superhero fight if you're going to have a new Superman. But the question that I keep posing, you know, in different, you know, forums is that what if James Gunn just decides? I mean, this is totally out of left field, but imagine if all along he's like, yeah, so like when the Flash ends, that's my new universe. I'm going to jumpstart from there, right? So how? Because I mean, if you think about it, you're like, okay, in the next 5 years, we're going to have a new Aquaman, a new Flash, and a new Wonder Woman, right? That's a lot of characters just to kind of to reintroduce. So you have to wait at least 3 to 4, maybe 5 years to do that, just to get them out, just to get Gal Gadot and Momoa and them, you know, out of your mind of like, oh yeah, that's Aquaman and that's Wonder Woman. You know, maybe he goes off of that. Probably not. I think is just going to flat out reboot everything. But he hasn't said yet. He hasn't stated exactly what he's going to do. And it's crazy to think about that there's fucking 4 movies coming out this year that are just going to be like, here you go. These were already made, and I hope you enjoy them, but that's going to be the end of that.
And Prime said something, I wonder which way they're going to lean into this. Like, is the third movie a Zatanna movie, and we get way into magic, and we get all the magic people? Or
wouldn't it be fun if
Keanu Reeves,
like
Keanu Reeves said he wants to come back as Constantine. You know, we keep talking about being off-brand. What if Constantine, if they just, you know, Doctor Strange him, and he's part of, you know what I mean? Like, he's one of the pillars of our society. I can see why that wouldn't be the case. But Keanu Reeves is getting old, which means he ain't going to be doing hand-to-hand combat for too much longer. And a green screen movie with him being a cocky asshole and making portals sounds pretty good to me.
I think what I would personally love to see from James Gunn is set up Lex Luthor in a very different way. Something that we as fans of the animated show are aware of. Like, this is the businessman Lex. He's got his hands in all these pots, but I want to see like this movie where you have like Livewire, or you have Parasite, or Metallo, or even Cyborg Superman show up, right? You have these characters, and then at the end of the movie, he still shows up at Lex Tower and says, "I know you were behind all of this. Clearly the evidence is not there because you've covered it, but I'm watching you, and I will be on you forever, preventing this crap." And like, just have that kind of
Cyborg Superman would be really fun.
But that's like a sequel movie. That's like a sequel one. If you have Hank Hancock show up in the first one, and then like get injured in the final battle, and then he comes back as the cyborg in the second one. Like, do something like that. Like, give us Metallo. Give us, like, what if Cyborg Superman is essentially Metallo 2.0? Like, Metallo was good, but what if we made him Superman instead? And like, do something like that. That'd be a lot of fun. It's different.
I think that, you know, when you look at what James Gunn has said, you know, he made that comment a while back, you know, in that long thread where he said, you know, Peter and I knew that going into this, that not everyone was going to be happy. And I think that, you know, from our standpoint, well, for most of us, our standpoint was that, you know, how do you course correct and make this universe better than what we were gonna get, right? How do you enrich the universe you already have, right? But I think when you hear comments like that from James Gunn, it definitely does ring the bell of, hey, look, no one's gonna be happy. Some will, some won't, but I'm gonna restart this bitch. I'm sorry. Like this, it's too convoluted, it's too screwed up. And I think that when it comes to like The Rock, I think that him and Seven Buck, I think that they were trying to do that. They were trying to like, let's bring Henry Cavill in, and we have a storyline that we can kind of build up the people that are already here. And they just said, nah, we're gonna restart all this. It's over. Yeah. So having said that, if it's like a Band-Aid, you just gotta pull it off. If that's the mentality that you're gonna take going into this, then I think that your next movies coming out will be Superman, Green Lantern, Batman. If not Superman, then Batman. You have to establish your DC Universe Batman. That's not
Wonder Woman.
It might be.
They ripped that movie. That meeting ended, and she was like, "I'm not doing it anymore." Everyone left that meeting and being like, "Oh, we're not a part of this anymore," which makes me feel like that's got to be in the equation in these new movies.
And that's what Zaslav said in the past. We heard him say, Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, our biggest IPs. So if that's the case, then why wouldn't your next three movies be Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman? And if you did that, if you came out and announced that, like, okay, the next three films, here they are, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and they're coming roughly around 2025, right? Then you would know it's over. They're restarting it, and let's just move forward. And if you do it now, right, if you make that announcement now, then it makes the bigger announcement at San Diego Comic-Con with your whole slate or a bigger slate of movies easier to take in because everyone's already flipped out. You know what I mean? So at that point, they can go, okay, so we are going to get a Green Lantern and a Green Arrow. That's cool. And a Nightwing movie?
Your reasoning is great. I feel like it will leave a bad taste because of the movies that were beforehand, which is why I feel like he already said he's doing Superman, but it just makes Green Lantern feel such a safe bet. It just feels like Green Lantern's going to light the way for all of us and lighten our darkest days.
No, and I think that when we get to San Diego Comic-Con, I think we're definitely going to get a Green Lantern movie announcement as part of the slate. But I think that one thing you could do to get ahead of the chaos is you say Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. I'm gonna give you the Trinity right off the bat.
Do you think that Batman movie is within this universe, or do you think that Bat movie is the next The Batman movie?
No, I think it's in this universe, not Pattinson.
I would say this. I just gave you my personal opinion, but if they're gonna do it from a business standpoint, and they're gonna do it like that, this is gonna be a full reboot. Everything's gonna start off with Superman. I would say this, and how you can introduce the characters. You do Superman. Of course, the Trinity has to come first. You have to lay down the groundwork of the main characters.
Yeah.
Superman come first, then you can bring in Wonder Woman. But the third movie should be a Green Arrow, but incorporate Batman in that. Don't give Batman his own movie. If you do that, that'll be cool. And you could do the core. Because if you do it that way, think about it. You don't need to regurgitate another Batman movie. You can bring them in everybody else's movie. You don't want to do that. Everybody's going to be anticipating Batman. Because you got to remember, if you bring in Green Arrow, they pretty much got the same villains in their same universe. Just because you in Star City don't mean that you can't do nothing. They can't do nothing in Gotham.
Right.
They're pretty much the same. You can introduce Bruce with Oliver. Then you do the core. You don't want to introduce just one Green Lantern. You could do the Lethal Weapon connection. You could just introduce the main characters that's in the core.
Right.
So, and then Flash will be later on down the line. But
Green Lantern Corps to me also feels where James Gunn, we all know all the lanterns we want. That to me feels like where he puts his stamp on it. We're going to get 3 more lanterns, which have only ever showed up one time in a comic book, and people love them. That feels very Guardians to me. He takes 3 weird aliens and they become the new Grogu, the new big guy, right? Batista wants out of that Marvel universe as soon as he can. I just feel like there's opportunities for those spots.
And if James Gunn is going to direct, and I'll say this, and that was the only question that everybody is saying with the Superman. if James Gunn, and this is why I say, and I know y'all want to close this out, but I rewatched the Suicide Squad. It's enjoyable, but I have my concerns because of the way James Gunn's style is. Because his jokes are forced. A lot of them. They're very forced. I like the violence. I like the maturity. I like all that. That's what DC is about. Yes. My only question would be this. How are you going to, what type of Kal-El are we going to get?
Yeah.
That is going to be the question on which version that you're going to get.
True.
Which Wonder Woman are going to get? Are you going to just be the lovey-dovey one? Or are we going to get the warrior goddess? Can you do a little bit of both? Batman is up in the water. It pretty much. I think people will be satisfied. I don't think we're going to get like the real hardcore Batman or whatever. I think pretty much he's probably going to do like a Batman animated series type Batman, something like that. You know, that people.
Yeah, a Batman who uses the same voice when he's in when he's Bruce Wayne and when he's in his suit. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like, at that
that's
point,
probably what that, something like that. That's going to just make the
at this point, if you do a voice modulator, you're like, oh, okay, that's already been done, which is a genius move. I love that Zach did that. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I didn't even think about that. And we're not going to have the Christian Bale like, oh, he's just going to be like, hey, what's up? Kind of like Pattinson. You know what I mean? He was really kind of a dark emo dude.
And again, like I say, and I'll shut up. With the core, I think if James Gunn, even though he's going to put it together, the core is pretty much what it'd be good. Let's just say James Gunn does direct the core, and he decides to do the Green Lantern. Well, he did a great job with Guardians of the Galaxy, so he can have a lot, like what Mike was saying. He can bring a lot of characters and sectors from all across the universe, and each sector in the universe in the Lantern universe. So he could take certain characters and bring them along, and but you have to establish the main ones. You got to bring in Garner, you got to do Stewart, you got to do and just to, incorporate everybody. They might bring in Jessica Cruz. Who knows? We don't know. But how it's going to be built, my only concern is that how it's going to be executed. If people really just go ahead and they watch the Suicide Squad, don't go on it, just go in just for entertainment reasons, and you will see what I'm talking about. A lot of jokes are forced. There's a lot of things that's just, the violence is fine, it's great, but there's just certain characters in the way they act. They shouldn't act like that. You see what I'm saying?
But do you think this is, but this is where it's hard for me to look into these things, because how much was that James Gunn? How much was the old management? And this is what James Gunn had to get approved. Well, because now he doesn't have to get anything approved. He just writes it.
Yeah. I think that, like when you watch Peacemaker, I think a lot of the humor, I think that James Gunn is really big on letting the actors kind of ad lib their comedy. He gives them the direction, and then they just kind of do their thing, and then he just kind of takes that and I'll use that line, this take. That's great. But will he do that with Superman and Batman? I don't know. I don't think so, but I mean, you never know, because they're going to want the studio is going to want a different tone. They're going to want a much more friendlier tone. They're going to want kids to be able to get into this as well. But I'm going to stick to my guns, and I think that it's going to be Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. And in the Batman movie, you can even make it to where Green Lantern's in that movie. I mean, hell, in Justice League, that opening scene with Batman fighting the Parademon, like you could have had freaking Hal Jordan show up in that scene and then be like, "Oh shit," you know what I mean? And that's if you're trying to rewrite the whole damn thing. But like sort of like New 52, where that's where they meet each other. So I think you may get something like that with Batman, where he meets Green Lantern as he's interacting with something going on. Who knows?
I do think you need to double up these. You do need to double up these heroes to get people, because that was the thing, with the last go around, everything was so secret, and hopefully they're going to come and stuff like that. And then when we didn't get them all, we just got the shotgun blast. If this is what I was going to do, like you do need to get Martian Manhunter early in this world. I think he's such a big part of building to a Justice League team. You got to have him around.
Wouldn't that be such a fun bit though? Like right off the bat, like Clark Kent is going and interviewing somebody, and he meets a Detective John Jones, and he's like, "Oh, you're nice," and he's like, I'll see you around, Clark." And you're like, "What?" Like, just something like that. Like that the characters are there, they just set them all up. But I think a lot of like how Marvel Phase 1, how when Marvel Phase 1, they did double up a lot of characters, and they did that rightfully so. Like in Thor, you had Hawkeye show up for the first time. In Iron Man 2, that's where Black Widow showed up. Like you had all these moments where you like, when the Avengers movie came, you're like, oh, that guy was in this one. Oh, that one was from this one. Like, you're going to have to do something like that. If you want to hit the
War
ground
Machine
running,
was in there, yeah.
When you hit the ground running, like, I don't think for a second that we're going to get 2 Batman movies competing with each other, because that's going to confuse the hell out of everybody. But I think that the Batman of the DCU will be like the supporting Batman. Like, he'll show up in every friggin' movie, and he'll be there, but he won't get his own solo movie. He'll be like a major like asset for each movie. Like, you'll have a World's Finest movie, that's where he shines. Or like in the Wonder Woman movie, he shows up, or like the Green Arrow movie, Batman shows up, says, hey, we need to recruit you for this thing that we're putting together. Like, make him the Nick Fury. Like, don't give Nick Fury his own show, but you give Nick Fury a massive plot line through all of the shows.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
We are at time, but there was still one more thing I wanted to bring up before we finished. I wanted to address this because a lot of people keep asking, a lot of people don't understand it. The Flash movie, the villain of the Flash movie is not General Zod. The villain of the Flash movie is not the Dark Flash. The villain of the Flash movie is the Flash. It's grief. It's loss and sorrow. That's what the villain of the movie is. However, some really cool, some toys leaked recently, and some fan art came about that gave us a really fantastic look at what Barry number 2 turns into, and how he's the final villain of that film. Essentially, he's not the main villain, but he's there. And I'm really kind of liking this design, because it reminds me a lot of the early New 52 Professor Zoom, the New 52 Reverse Flash, where he's all like, that's clearly unique. What do y'all think of the Dark Flash?
I think it's cool. I mean,
idea.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. Depending on how they use it, but I think it's gonna be cool. I mean, and that's a shame too. I mean, look at all this with the concept art. I mean, this looks really, really, really amazing, and it's not gonna go anywhere.
The Dark Flash in here, that was actually fan art made by Yosef Defensi.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I'm butchering it. Hold on, I'm just. But the story, I mean, obviously we know that there's 2 Barrys running around this movie. We've got main Barry from Zach's movies, and then we've got this long-haired Barry that's going to be in this movie. From what we understand, this long-haired Barry is going to have no powers, and they're going to give him powers in the film by recreating the accident. But this Barry also has got some issues, and they don't know about these issues until he gets powers. But this Barry is the one that makes the Michael Keaton Flash suit. And then eventually when he does snap, he's going to, from what I can tell, it kind of sounds like he's going to assimilate part of Zod's world engine, or he's going to assimilate Kara's ship, or some form of Kryptonian metal is what's going to turn his suit into what it is. But his whole thing is that he's now the Flash that can take a punch from Supergirl because he's got armor on. So it's going to be a very, very fun 11th hour fight.
Yeah, I think that what we're looking at is that we know that it's going to be young Flash that ends up like that, and I think that we talked about it on the Four Nerds, and I've talked about it on my show with Ryan a lot too, and I think at the end of the day, it's one of those things where we've already heard we've heard talk about how he has to eventually, fix the timeline, right? With, the whole can of tomatoes thing, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to fix the timeline by going back and preventing yourself from doing something, which is what he did in Flashpoint anyway, he went back and prevented himself from going back in time to save his mother, right? I think what we have to think about is, what does that mean for this young Barry?
That's probably what's going to spark it.
If you tell, if Prime and if I'm the older Barry Allen, and Prime is the young Barry Allen, and then eventually I tell Prime, I'm going to go back and prevent myself from doing this, then Prime would say, no, fuck that. If you do that, then I'm not going to exist. And so I think that's where you might have a little bit of a clash between these two characters. Now, how he gets that medal, I have no idea. But I think eventually those two are going to come full circle from being who are you to being best friends to being, their own worst enemy. Because the scene where he's, he has to paint the suit, I would imagine it's the two of them probably having a lot of fun doing it because they're both the same person. It's like, yeah, let's do that. Or how about lighting down here? Yeah, I got it. They're like in sync in a way. And then at the end, they're the opposite of that. And so where does that leave the characters, and where does that Dark Flash go, and what happens to him? I don't know. But
I mean, think of it this way: you have this young Barry who just got powers, who sees how powerful he can because of the other Barry, and now the other Barry is saying, "Okay, I got to go stop myself. I got to go kill my mom again." Young Barry's probably going to be like, "You can't kill her. One, because you created me, but two, because I'm going to go prevent her from dying too. I want to go mess up the multiverse where she never died." Like, you have just a can of worms that's going to come from that. And I think having another Barry as the foil for the film is pretty fun, to be honest.
Well, and that, on top of that, it's the question also is, why did they give young Barry the abilities? Maybe because when they saw the message of General Zod showing up, they figured, okay, well, 2 speedsters is better than 1. Let's give him the power too. But I feel like there has to be a reason that they want to have a second speedster for whatever reason.
There is. I think that's part of the major plot of why they have to do it, and I think it has to do with the navigating of the Speed Force and Barry not thinking he can do it correctly. So I think he's like, maybe if I have a second one, we can do this right this time because there's 2 of us. But
and it could very well be that in the movie he tries to use the Speed Force to go back in time and he can't. And so they're like, hey, if there's 2 of us doing it at the same time, that will allow us to fully navigate it because we're twice as powerful. Like, oh yeah, who knows? Yeah.
Is there any chance that the first one messes up and the second one has the end of the first act or something is the second one going and saving him from something, and then that's how they get together?
I don't know, but at the end of the day, this movie isn't going to matter because James Gunn's going to reboot the DCU anyway. So
I know it's such a crazy spot that we're going to have these movies, and if they're great movies, good job that you liked it. That's all. And if they're bad movies,
hey, that's good.
Right. And if they're bad movies, then it will feel like it justifies this. But I don't know. It feels like they're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You know what I mean? Like, I want the movies to be successful, but if they're not successful, we're just going to say like, oh, that's because they were all not successful. It's very weird.
I would say this. Everything is going to pretty much be told at San Diego Comic-Con. Because San Diego Comic-Con is not going to be until when? What? July, August?
June, July,
end of summer. Yeah.
July? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's July. So that's after The Flash.
Right. Yeah. Only reason why I say that is because, like I say, Shazam comes out in March. And then Flash is going to come out on the 16th of June. So once it's already out, then San Diego is going to come out. Then they're going to introduce what's going to be new with DC. The only movie that might suffer, that might get a hit, is going to be Aquaman 2. And it really ain't going to matter anyway.
Yeah, that movie has so many problems already.
Right. It's not going to matter anyway. You might have, now, don't get me wrong. It's going to be the people that are diehard Jason Momoa fans. And they're just going to go watch it. Or I'm going to go watch it because I'm a DC head. So I'm going to watch it.
Yeah.
Right,
Jason. Or whatever.
I'm going to see it.
But my thing is that movie could suffer after they do their panel presentation at San Diego Comic-Con. And I said this, and I'm going to keep on, and I said it, and I stuck to it. The pre-slate, all the big major stuff is going to be at San Diego Comic-Con. They might have some of the major people that they're going to cast. They got a while. They got 6 months. They got 6 months to cast people and to put people in the cast. I mean, the cast.
And they can do it quickly.
Yeah, they can do it very fast.
Next week if they wanted to.
Right. So, and to introduce them, this is going to be your new Superman. This is going to be your such and such and such. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, we get Superman, we get Lois Lane, we get head of the newspaper guy, we get Jimmy, then maybe.
Once they do that, people pretty much are going to be, okay, we got the pre-slate, we're anticipating the San Diego Comic-Con. Once they see it, everything else is probably going to be out the water. They're going to pretty much forget it. So we just got to wait. You know, I'm stoked. I'm ready. You know, I'm stoked. I'm ready.
But on that note, I want to thank you all for joining us. We're going to wrap up right here. We're 20 minutes over what we normally do, but we had a lot to talk about. Those of you at home, join us tomorrow for our debut episode for Through the Monocle. It's going to be our new weekly movie review show. It's going to be every Wednesday, 5 o'clock. It's going to drop. And on Fridays, we have starting the Cultured Pull List. This will be our comic review show that's done by a couple new gentlemen joining our network. They're going to be focusing this week specifically on the first 3 issues of DC's Dark Crisis. So be sure to check that out. If you want to help us keep the lights on, keep us going, join us over at Patreon, patreon.com/theculturednerd. And if there's any specific show that you want to support, there's a specific tier for that show. So be on the lookout there. I have been your host, Taylor Murphy, my co-host, Michael Santel, and today our guests, Nicotina and Prime the Godfather. Thank you for joining us today. And if you're at home, scan that QR code, support us on the socials, and like and subscribe. We will see you then. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.